Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. So I started to do a video yesterday, and then I got loaded so fast that I didn't finish it up, and I just wanted to update everybody. So if you are anywhere between I-96 to the north and probably US 30 to the south, in Michigan, Indiana, or Ohio, you know, you're in like a zone of ice storm. And I'm actually in Lansing, Michigan right now. I delivered a couple hours ago over in Wixom, but I came over here because I've been running from the ice storm part of this bigger storm. I can't remember what the name is. It Olive? I'm not good with the winter storm names, because when I was a kid, it was just winter. we didn't really name any storms. It's not like they're hurricanes where it's like, when I was a kid, it seemed like it snowed pretty much every day. We didn't think much of it. Hurricanes, they were once in a while, so you named them. Anyway, I've been running from this all day. I got up as early as I could and got on the road. And I was actually down on the Indiana toll road because I was thinking I would get south of it. But really what I inadvertently did is got right into the middle of it. But by the time I realized my error, I was already parked. So I was like, all right, I'm going to get up early and then I'm going to go east and head north. So I got over to 69 before it started raining in Indiana, and then I just headed north and stuff. But it was sleeting here in Lansing a little while ago, but this area is under the ice storm warning until 04 tomorrow morning. So everybody just be careful. I didn't see any accidents, but again, I was running from it, so I don't know what it's like down in Indiana or, northern Ohio or anything at this point. So today's the 22nd of February. Lots of interesting stuff happened on this day. On this day in 1909, the Great White Fleet finished its around the world tour. The USS Connecticut was the lead ship in that, and that was basically what is called power projection. The US Navy sent a bunch of dreadnoughts around the world. The ships were painted white, which was really kind of crazy because they were all coal fired. They must have gone through a butt ton of paint, but they painted these ships white, and they basically showed the flag in all these foreign ports, and just basically showed the military might of the U.S. Navy. On this day in 1862, Jefferson Davis was sworn in as the president of the Confederate States, and he got a 6-year term, which he did not end up finishing. His term ended sometime after he was captured wearing women's clothing to try and evade capture. So he didn't really get busted in a very honorable way. He was trying to get out of being held accountable. So that happened in 1862. Like I said, he did not serve out his term. 1959, on this day in 1959, Lee Petty, who is the father of King Richard Petty, won the first Daytona 500 on this day in 1959. In 1980, on this day, the miracle on ice occurred when the U.S. hockey team under Coach Herb Brooks beat the Russians, well, actually the Soviet Union, in hockey at Lake Placid. The Russians, and by the way, the Miracle on Ice was actually not the gold medal game. The gold medal game was against Sweden, I believe, when the U.S. actually won the gold medal. This was a semifinal game against the Soviet Union, who was regarded as the team to beat in the tournament. So we beat, the U.S. hockey team beat the Russians, beat the Soviet Union in the semifinals. That was 1980 up in Lake Placid, New York, which, by the way, is the only city that's hosted the Winter Olympic Games twice. The only North American city that's hosted the games twice, Lake Placid. Although I'm hearing that maybe Salt Lake City is going to be up for another hosting party. I think the Winter Olympics is kind of threatened by the fact that the planet's warming. It's tougher to find locations that can reliably have snow. So we'll see. And then on this day in 1994, a guy by the name of Aldrich Ames, a CIA case officer, and his wife were indicted for spying for the Russians. The interesting thing about Aldrich Ames' arrest was that at the time, Ames told, I think, the FBI or the CIA, counterintelligence people, that he basically said, you got me, but there's somebody else out there too. Like, he was basically telling them that he knew that there was another American that was spying for the Soviet Union and passing along really high level intelligence. And I don't, Ames knew that because of information that the Russians had, that they would ask him about. And it turned out he was right. That guy was FBI agent Robert Hansen. And I think there was a movie made about him. But he did grave damage to the United States also. In fact, both of these guys, their actions resulted in people being executed behind the Iron Curtain. So, pretty crazy stuff. I've read a lot about these guys and what they did and the signs that were missed along the way, and it's kind of interesting. So anyway, I wanted to talk about, so that's a little update on history for this day. I wanted to talk about DriveWise. I'm also going to talk, I guess maybe in a separate video, about kind of some follow-up thoughts on the new pay scale. I think Lyle did a video today for that, but I haven't watched it yet. So it'll be interesting to hear what he had to say over at No Hippie Trucking and Transportation. But I wanted to talk about DriveWise. Lyle, in fact, kind of opined on DriveWise, said it was, had some corny little settings. And I'll agree. I mean, the very first time that because I kind of knew we were doing it, but I still have my, my pre-pass. And, I like the pre-pass because it's unobtrusive. You get a little tiny green or red light, and you get a distinct audible tone depending on the color of the light you got. The other thing is that you can see it, if you got your eyes on the road. Mine was up here, right beside my black box up here, and I could see it out of the corner of my eye, right? It's not, but it doesn't it's like I said, it's not obtrusive. And, and it has a sound, so I can, I don't have to take my eyes off the road. It's not distracting. DriveWise, the first time that it did its job or whatever, I did not realize, maybe I should have watched the training video, that it was gonna like illuminate the entire screen on my Qualcomm, like, you know, wall to wall. And the first time it came on, it was so bright that I should say that at night I only have my Qualcomm illumination set at one notch above completely dark. But even at that, it was so bright, it kind of like shocked me and, you know, temporarily gave me night blindness. And so I actually pushed the down button on the illumination and completely shut it off. But since then, I'm a little more used to it. It doesn't surprise me as much. But my findings about DriveWise are my observations are this. First of all, it provides you with a lot of information that in the moment is mostly useless. And I say that because it doesn't do it for every exit, but lots of random exits that I probably would never take. Like there was one out in Redding, California, and I was like, you know how in California, if you're in an urban area, some of the exits are these really tight little curves. Like it's just like, you know, you got a little off ramp, and then it totally like button hooks, and you're on a street, right? And so if you decide to get off at one of those types of exits, you're gonna have to be very cautious to not be like tearing up the vegetation with your trailer wheels and stuff, because they're that tight. And typically, if you're using a truck GPS, it doesn't route you on those. Not saying it doesn't sometimes, but a lot of times it'll route you somewhere else, and then you go down a surface street. So the first time I saw this, I was driving through Redding on I-5, and it's like exit, you know, I don't know what number it was, 512B, you know, caution, it's a rollover hazard. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks, because I'm not taking that exit. But it doesn't do it for all exits. It doesn't give you the 411 for all the exits. And I could tell by driving by exits, it doesn't even give you the information for all of the really tight ones. I mean, let's be candid. There's almost no exit that's not a slight to, you know, dramatic rollover hazard. There's every once in a while you'll get an off ramp that's just completely straight. Although you do have to stop at the bottom of them usually. I was in Sidney, Nebraska one morning. I was coming out of the Loves there, and I actually watched this truck come flying down the off ramp from 80 eastbound and plow into another, like not stop and run into the side of a beer truck semi. I was like, because I saw him out of the corner of my eye. I was like, that guy's really moving. And yeah, he was. He didn't stop. Or he didn't stop in time, because he went right through the intersection and hit this beer truck that was going by that had the right of way. So anyway, DriveWise gives you those kinds of warnings. Again, to me, it's a distraction. You know, some of the way station information seems like it takes, it doesn't get to you quick enough. And you know, there are a couple other warning things that I've seen that I'm like the other day one came up. It was like, caution, this bridge is 14, the clearance at this bridge is 14.4. I'm like, oh, thanks. If I'm hauling, you know, some big ass crane, you know, that would be interesting to me, but it's not, and I'm not. And you know, so I feel like this thing is just put in here. You know, I don't know who tested this. I don't know who the test subjects were. And you know, another driver said to me yesterday that they thought that Prime does these test runs without, just to kind of like placate drivers as if somebody actually approved this. Although, 100 out of 100 drivers could have said, no, I don't like it, I'd rather have the pre-pass. So I'm just curious, if you're a driver that actually was part of the test group and said, yeah, this thing is great, or it's better than pre-pass, I'd like to hear from you, and I'd like to hear what you thought was better, because to me it requires too much of my attention to use the information and make decisions quickly. So that's that. But here's the other thing that I found out yesterday about DriveWise that some of you may not know. And I think part of the reason you may not know this, or I didn't know it until yesterday, is because DriveWise is really inconsistent. It doesn't tell you every exit that has a rollover hazard. It doesn't tell you every bridge that's 14.4 or below. I was on the Tri-State Tollway, 294, going around Chicago, and I admittedly was in a little bit of a hurry because the load I was on was tight, but I also knew this storm was coming, so I wanted to get as far to the east as I could. So it just so happens, and I've told this story before, when my truck is set at, the cruise is set at 65, the truck does 64 on flat ground. It just goes 64. That's as fast as it'll go. So I was coming from, I was out by O'Hare, and as you come south on the tollway towards O'Hare, the speed limit goes from 65 down to 60. So I knew that the speed limit went down to 60. But I didn't slow down. Because I was like, the most I'm going to be doing is 64 because it's flat through there. And, it was getting towards evening rush hour, and, traffic's always pretty heavy in the Chicago area. It's a big city. So my adaptive cruise control will slow me down a lot. So maybe I'm doing 62 a lot of the time. There's no police officer, especially no Illinois state trooper, that's going to pick me up for doing 62 on 26, out there, 62 and a 60, or even 64 and a 60. So I was just like, I'm going as fast as I can for the conditions. I ended up going a lot slower later because there was just more traffic. But what was really interesting about that was that DriveWise, the entire screen lit up and said, basically it said, you are speeding and this is a 60-mile-an-hour zone, slow down. Well, what does that tell me about DriveWise? It tells me that DriveWise monitors the truck's speed in real time. So it's matching the truck's speed to the speed limit at a given location in real time. So for those of you, because I've done a few shows about, intrusive, like driver-facing cameras, and everybody's been like, oh, I don't want anybody looking at me. I don't like being, people looking over my shoulder. Well, guess what, folks? If you got DriveWise, if you're at Prime, and so you do, all of us do now, they now have an ability. Now, I don't know that they didn't have the ability to see a truck's speed in any given place at any given time anyway. However, I don't know that they had the ability to match the speed of a truck to the posted speed limit. Now, having said that, right, so that's a feature that DriveWise has that I'm very certain Pre-Pass didn't have. So real-time speed monitoring. But this is what I will say about that. I worked for a company that had driver-facing cameras. They also had speed cameras, in that they had these cameras that they picked up the posted speed limit signs, which is actually better, because if you notice, a lot of nav, they don't have the right speed limit. Like, you'll be in a 70 zone and it'll say it's 60, or you'll be in a 60 and it'll say it's 65. So they don't update that. But these cameras picked up the speed. The problem with the stupid cameras was it picked up every speed limit sign. So when you were driving around Atlanta, and you go by, and in Georgia, they have the minimum speed limit signs separate from the speed limit signs, the upper speed limit signs. So the minimum signs are separate from the maximum signs. So you'd be driving along at 55, 65, whatever it was at that part of 385, and then you'd go by one of those minimum signs, and sure enough, you'd get the ding, you're speeding bell. No, you weren't speeding. It would read the signs on service roads. It would read the signs on exit ramps. It was a pain in the butt. Pain in the butt. So anyway, I just wanted to share those thoughts about DriveWise. It's not all that. I mean, maybe it's cheaper than pre-pass. Maybe that's why they got it. To me, it's a distraction. I really haven't. I mean, other than telling me that I can go by some way stations, a few of them, and I'm not even sure. I think only one so far that was actually open did it tell me I could go by. And I've got to tell you, that was the first one. I was like, I'm looking over my shoulder. I kept looking to see if like some DOT officer is going to chase me down, because I just didn't trust this thing. But yeah, I'm not a fan. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. And by the way, the speed monitoring thing, I'm not like, that's not some huge revelation. It's not some showstopper for me, because I feel like, they can monitor it. But my issue with the DriveWise is it's going to be wrong. And, somebody may say something, well, you were doing, 65 in a 40. Can you explain that? And be like, yeah, DriveWise is wrong. And it's the same thing with like the critical events. These systems are not really that attuned to what's going on. So anyway, thanks for watching. Be safe out there. I mean, there's crazy weather almost everywhere, unless you're in Florida. Which, by the way, was purchased on this day in, I think, like 1819. Yeah, 1819. This day in 1819, by a treaty, we bought Florida for $5 million from Spain, and it's been decreasing in value ever since. So we got ripped. Anyway, I will talk to you soon. Bye.